Okay, good morning, everybody. There we go. Can you see my screen? No, you can't.
No.
I didn't share it yet.
I can see you.
There we go. I don't really have topics on slides or anything, but we can at least get started. Chris brought up a good topic. I've got one tucked in the reserve here for us to talk about that I don't think we have ever covered before, so we'll get on to that in a moment. But let's talk about what it takes to be successful in this career field. I think that the career field in general, well, IT in general, is a technological field. It requires knowledge and practice of details. You've got to have attention to detail. You've got to be focused on solutions, not just accomplishing work. If you don't do that, then a lot of the solutions could pass you by. For example, you could say, well, I'm working on this particular, network topology stuff that I'm working on. Well, if you don't understand all about the various ports and protocols, if you don't understand unidirectional versus bidirectional, etc., if you don't comprehend the environment in which you're speaking or trying to operate or trying to be brought on to learn about, it could be very difficult. It's sort of like, well, trying to apply for a lifeguard job when you can't swim. You may have read a book about how to be a lifeguard, but that does not mean you can save lives if people are, floundering in the deep end of the pool. So that's one of the reasons why it's really important for us to sit and converse about these things. Number one, you should go out and study. You should watch the news. You should go to technical news websites. Chris, you turned me on to Bleeping Computer. Really good site. Lots of helpful information, and at a low-level technical level. Another one which is designed for people who have almost no technological background is Wired.com. They're actually like a news article magazine sort of thing. Not so much from the field, but they're focused on, how do I say it, internet type, communication type topics. So they're pretty broad, and you've got to sort of dig down into it to find it. But they talk about, for example, the social impacts of ransomware. They talk about the financial impacts of certain malware and those sorts of things, which they talk about it from the viewpoint of somebody looking into the career field. So I like Wired because it uses a lot of human terms rather than technical terms. So anyway, it's a technical career field. You've got to understand, what IT is, how IT operates, and even if you just choose one particular section of IT, such as network operations, that is enough to get you started. But in the end, it's important for you to get that whole picture viewpoint throughout. One of the other things that you need is the knowledge that you don't know it all. And I have encountered people, like in interviews and stuff, in job interviews, and by the way, I am almost never impressed by somebody who impresses themselves. What I mean by that is they come in and they say, I know it all. And I say, well, that in itself is your Achilles heel, because nobody knows it all. You can't know it all. You can study this for, well, I've been in the IT field for 31 years. Do I know it all? Absolutely not. I think it was somebody asked Einstein one time, and he said, the more I learn, the more I realize I have yet to learn. You know, the deeper you go into the career field, the bigger it becomes. The more you look at it and go, wow, holy smokes, I didn't even think about that. You know, the one you brought to us, Douglas, the fish tank thermometers, you gotta be joking me, you know, but yeah, it's true. So when you're thinking about this, you always have to be aware that there are things you don't know. And that should keep you hungry to learn. That should keep you going out and looking for stuff rather than, you know, turning on Netflix. Maybe you should go out and learn a little bit more about this new thing that I just heard about, or something like that. So you always have to stay ambitious toward learning more. I think that in itself is what I would call a positive factor if you walk into an interview, for example. One other thing that I think is helpful if you are seeking a job in this career field is be careful about, how do I say this, tossing around phrases that you're not quite sure about. I'll use an example. I talked to one guy for, oh gosh, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes about this mentorship program. And during that time, at least 5 times, I heard him say, well, everything's got a back door. Everything's got a back door. Everything's got a back door. That's sort of like talking to a car dealer and having him say, there's leaks in all the tires. Well, so what are we going to do about it? Well, there's leaks in all the tires. Do you want a test drive? No. So be thinking about what you're saying. Be careful that you're not just tossing terms to try and impress somebody. This person obviously heard something, saw it demonstrated once or twice, and therefore it became a tool for them as part of their discussion. But if you go into an interview with somebody who's trying to develop a strong defense in-depth approach, phased layering of defenses, and you say, well, everything has a back door. That may or may not be fully true, but what you're basically saying is that no defense is going to be totally effective. Well, me as a hiring manager, I'd turn and say, well, then why am I even speaking to you? Why don't you go get a job pumping gas? You know, rather than, why are you here if you're going to be defeating the purposes of our cyber defenses by saying our cyber defenses are never going to work anyway? So be careful about that. Be ambitious. Be forward-reaching. Be looking towards solutions rather than continually laying in the field of there's a problem. Everything sucks. Everything sucks. Everything sucks. Everything sucks. After a while, I'm not going to want to hear that as a hiring manager. I want to hear somebody who has thoughts and ideas. Yeah, okay, it's been a challenge. Yeah, it's going to continue to be a challenge. But what do we do about it today? That's what people are looking for. They're looking for fresh ideas. And I will tell you, just walking in off the street into an interview, you could present perspective that your manager hadn't even considered. So always be thinking about various ways to look at something, not everything sucks, you know. Who was the guy on Winnie the Pooh? Eeyore.
Eeyore.
Oh, it's all not worth our time anyway. What? Dude, get out of my office. You're toxic. No, just make sure that you're on the positive side of the discussion. Yeah, let's go after these bad guys. Let's make a difference. Let's give our employers, the people who fund us, a real reason to believe that they've made the right choice. Stay on the positive side of that, not on the negative side. Yeah, everything sucks. Yeah, people can get into everything. Bye.
Yeah.
What's when they go into casting calls? If you're going for a casting call, next. That's it. You're done. So just be aware that that's helpful as well. And then we get into training, and then we get into schooling, and then we get into all of the things that allow you to even be in the interview. People aren't going to start off, or rarely are they going to start off with your education and or your training and or your certifications unless that's all that's in your interview, all that's in your resume. If you have experience, they're going to start there. And then they're going to back it up, because the education and the training, the technical certifications and everything, those demonstrate an aptitude and an ability, but experience shows what you do when you're under fire, what you do when you're in an actual operating environment. And I'm not hiring you based on what tests you've passed. I'm hiring you based on your potential to be successful and help us be successful in real life operations. Okay, so always be thinking about that. And that's why Chris and I have mentioned this a number of times. It's important to realize that even volunteer work is good work. You can demonstrate, yes, I've done this. It may have been small scale, but you approached it professionally. You approached it with a solution in mind. You implemented it fully. After a while, they could be like, oh, wow. Well, did you write operating procedures? Yep, sure did. Right here it says, if I move on, this is how this program continues working. Wow. That's impressive. You thought about things literally outside of what you see and hear and feel yourself. You thought about the organization. That's a good thing, But you've got to demonstrate that in live operations. So volunteering for things, absolutely. I don't care if it's for your homeowners association. I don't care if it's for a volunteer organization, United Way, your local church, any charity you work for. It could be your bike club for all it matters, so long as you have the cyber mindset and, okay, well, I set up the website, but then the first thing I did was I went in and I made sure that the server's patched and all the information is up to date on it. I actually tried, what's it called, John the Ripper or something against our own website to make sure that we don't have vulnerabilities and this website will be durable even while, we're asleep at night. That's a big thing. That says a lot about where your head is. And it doesn't matter if it's a website for your kid's daycare. It doesn't matter. So be thinking about that. Volunteer. Look for IT opportunities. Look for possibilities where you can sort of flex your muscles and say, I'm doing this because I want to have something on my resume. that says, I have implemented this, or I have operated this, or I caught a bad guy. You know, somebody was actually, you know, conducting this attack against our HOA website, and I fixed it by doing this, this, and this, and here's the follow-up, and here's what I did to make sure it won't happen again. Done. You know? You thought from end to end about the issue, started at the problem, addressed the problem, resolved the issue, and then we talk about this in our homework. Lessons learned. What worked well, what didn't work well, and if it happens again, what do we do? You know, what do we do to help make our results better or less bad? Always use phrases that your prospective hiring manager is going to click on. Oh, you did multi-layer defense? Yep, I did this and this. Okay, it's only 2 layers, but that's multi-layer. You thought about it. One was host-based, one was environment-based, one was network-based, whatever. One was packet, one was device. You know, you can talk about those things. And then lessons learned. Always say, yeah, when we were done, we sat down and had a lessons learned session. You did what? That is excellent. Guess what? We haven't even had time to do lessons learned. Maybe you can teach us a thing or two. And yes, it does happen. It does happen. So, sorry, I've spoken for a while. Chris, do you have any thoughts or ideas on this?
I would say there would a number 4, and it's how you, and you kind of talked about this, Scotty. It's how you interact with customers, your fellow colleagues, and your boss. And I'll do a very quick story. I did a ticket last week, and it was for a software. I won't name the software. I won't name any customers or agencies here, but the software was not on our approved list. And I did my own research on it, found out that it was a browser-based application. It never was a software download, but I kept that in my head. So when I talked to the customer, I listened to the customer first, and the customer said, well, I had a laptop that had a application on my desktop, and it's no longer there anymore. So I listened to her more, and she goes, well, I used to log into something, and the screen popped up. And after listening to her all the way and kind of doing the active listening, nodding, and just remaining positive and upbeat about it, I said, hey, here's what I've done with my research. Type in the name of this software on your website. Sure enough, the website pops up. She clicks on the link to get to what she goes, that looks familiar. And it pops up an ID and password, and I go, do you know your credentials? And she goes, yes, I have credentials. And she plugged it in. She says, I forgot my password. And sure enough, I said, well, is there a way you can reset it? So yes, she pressed the reset button. Reset process goes fine. She tries to enter a new password. The error screen pops up and says, you already used this password. This is the part where I had to hold my tongue and try not to laugh at her, because she knew what her password was. But you can't just say that to the customer, because it would be offensive to that customer to make the question, to sit there and say it's obvious. You know your password. So she created a new password. She went through, and then boom, it worked. And that fits with what you said about solutions based. You find the solution to have customer delight and customer experience. And I think the number 4 should be the active listening and to keep positive about it.
Excellent.
No soft skills.
Any thoughts?
No. No, not really.
Okay. Chris, this brought up something that you were describing that I did not highlight yet. One of the other things that a prospective hiring manager is going to be examining and evaluating during your interview is how well will this individual integrate into my team. And having a team mindset rather than a, I'm the bee's knees mindset can really help you. I think I told you guys about this once or twice before. I had an individual when I was working in the Pentagon for the Secretary of Defense. I had a need for a systems person, and there was somebody else in my company, literally around the corner in the Pentagon. He'd been at the Pentagon, as long as I had, with the same company that I was with, and had received an award for his technical knowledge. And so our vice president said, hey, you might interview this guy for your vacancy. I said, oh, okay, sounds good. I'm always looking for good talent. And I interviewed this guy, and during the course of the interview, he was, talking a lot about him and what he's good at and what he has done. Okay, well, it's important if you can't toot your own horn, nobody else is going to. So you've got to make that balance between showing confidence and showing cockiness. And you've got to find that balance. And by the way, that balance will change depending upon who you're talking to. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. When I spoke to another branch chief, my very first job in the Pentagon. But anyway, this guy, I was talking to him, and I said, well, we're a pretty small team, so we tend to have to jockey back and forth between customer support and project completion. In other words, while the phone's ringing, you're still working on a project that you've got to be, completing at some point. So sometimes you have to set that project down, do this thing. This guy, like Chris, you were saying, this person's having trouble getting operating, and then go back to, make the customer happy, then go back to your project. So you could be picking up, setting down, picking up, setting down, picking up, setting down your projects because of the customers needing support. And for small teams, that is just a fact. You don't have a dedicated customer support capability. Everybody, I had a phrase with one guy who eventually went to Microsoft. I said, if the phone's ringing, it's for you. And he said, dude, I'm a really expensive call center tech. I said, yep, I understand that. If the phone rings, it's for you. He said, understood. I said, I don't care about the expense. He's like, I could be far better used over here. I said, I don't care. If the phone's ringing, the people who hired us need something, and we've got to deal with it. If nobody else is answering the phone, you answer the phone. So you've got to make that balance between confidence and cockiness. As I was interviewing this guy, and I said this thing about going back and forth between customer fulfillment and project completion, I said sometimes, several times throughout the course of the day. And I said, what do you think about that? And I was talking to him, and at one point, he said, oh, we have somebody new. Harminder.
Yes, Harminder. Good morning, everybody.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey,
Scotty and Doug, this is my friend Harminder that it was in my Security Plus study group that I invited him to this group.
Oh, very good. Welcome. Good to have you. So we're talking about interview, let's say, do's and don'ts the things that a prospective hiring manager is going to be looking for during an interview. This is recorded, so you can play back the part that you've missed. I will put it on our Facebook page and drop it in the email group. But to continue on, this gentleman that I was speaking to, very bright, very technical. He had literally won awards for his technical capabilities, and yet when I said you could be jumping back and forth between customer fulfillment and project completion, sometimes several times throughout the day, and I told him, I said, that can be kind of disruptive. And at one point I heard him say it, and that was the end of the interview, where he said, yeah, you know, sometimes customers can be annoying. I stopped listening. If you are not satisfying the customers, you can build the best technical infrastructure the planet has ever heard of. But if you think that the people who pay your paycheck are an irritation, I don't want you around. You know, something's going to happen, somebody's going to say something, and the next thing you know, you're going to give a flippant remark that's going to have both you and me standing in front of that customer saying, you know, I'm trying to get help, and your guys are putting me down, or whatever. So you've got to be aware that there's a difference between confidence and cockiness. And I will tell you confidence, and this was I was in my college classes, in fact. We had a career guidance counselor come for my CIS classes. And she's sitting there talking in the whole classroom with people, and they're talking about, like this, interview techniques. And I was in civil service. I was moving to the Pentagon. This was an interview that I did for the Pentagon. And the individual that I was interviewing with was military. Now, if you understand the military, you know that every couple years they are moving. The military move around. It is just part of their professional career is to move around to various assignments. So that's the difference between a military supervisor and a civilian supervisor. Civilian supervisor could be your boss forever until you both get old and gray and decide to retire to Florida. But military, I knew that this guy was going to be there for a while and then was going somewhere else. I knew that. So during our interview, he said, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, the usual question that they ask, number one, why should I hire you? And number two, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Those are, you'd better have practiced answers for both of those. Well, when this guy asked me this question, he said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, honestly, in your seat. And my guidance counselor and everybody in the room, in the classroom, was like, oh, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did, and I got the job because I read the situation and said, he knows he can't stay. So he needs to be training a successor. If he doesn't already have one in mind, pick me. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? In your seat. And I'm ready for it. Let's go. You know, that sort of thing. So you've got to be able to read the situation. In a regular civilian interview, that would have been, you know, like, I don't know, poking him in the eye with a pen or something. You know, it would not have been successful. But because he was military, he was a major in the Air Force, I knew that he had to go somewhere. He knew that he had to go somewhere. And I basically said, I feel that I can reach a point in my technical knowledge to where I can carry on where you have to leave off. So, you have to gauge that when you go into an interview. And again, if the person's not wearing a military uniform, don't use that phrase. But it worked for me. I got hired, and I ended up basically running the group. I wasn't the branch chief, but I ended up running my particular group within the branch within 2 years. So it is possible to say different things. In fact, you probably should say different things depending upon who you're speaking with. And this is one other thing that you should understand. If you only have one set of rehearsed answers, you're setting yourself up for challenges. For example, what if the individual, I will tell you this, when I interview, one of the things that I tend to do, at the end of the interview, I basically said how you impressed me, how you didn't impress me, what I'm thinking at this point, and in the future, here's what you might do when you're interviewing next time, etc. I try and help make sure that everyone I speak to leaves a little bigger, a little smarter, even if they're just interviewees, and I've got, 4 more outside the door. I don't care. I try and pour into people. So if you're speaking to somebody who has that mindset, you should be listening and taking stuff in and showing your eagerness. If somebody, if you are coming across as being a little bit too eager, your interviewer will give you clues. Your interviewer will give you clues. Some are going to be verbal, but some are also going to be nonverbal. Let's say you and I are talking, and I'm showing you my body posture, and I'm asking you this question about this and this and this, and you say, oh, well, I think I'm going to, I'll do this or this or this. Well, if I shift backwards and cross my arms, what does that indicate? Anybody?
Not amused.
No
or
interest.
something's up.
Not amused. What did you say, Douglas?
No interest. I'm not interested.
Not interested.
It means
That's a
it's not
signal
a
of growth in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
okay. It means it is not a relevant answer. It is not a relevant answer, so that's why it shows.
Okay. Very good. Here's a way to think about it. And by the way, when you are in your own interview, never let your back touch the back of the chair. Okay? Just for example, you don't want to be sitting like this. You want to be engaged, interested. You're in this conversation. Okay? So be thinking about that. This also means I am closed. You're not going to be saying anything for a little while until you can re-engage me and I start, paying attention again. This means I'm not accepting input. That's a way to think about it. If you see something like this, really a good time to try and lighten things up a little bit. Shift your place in the chair and say, something about, so what are the long-term aspects of this career field, or something like that. In other words, try and shift the conversation if you can, because this was unsuccessful. Whatever you were doing has not been successful. It is usually not permanent. Managers learn to be fluid. That's how they get to be managers. Why? Because I'm going to talk to, 6 people who are really, really good and hard workers and team-spirited, and I'm going to have 2 jerks that I can barely get into work that are going to be absolute poison to the team when they arrive, etc., and I've got to manage them both. All right, so managers, to be a manager, you've got to be flexible. So try and help build off that flexibility and say, well, I'm in an area that I don't want to stay. Let's try and get somewhere else, for example. Anybody else have experiences for body language or responses? Well, I will tell you, when I was on a few minutes ago and I said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, in your seat, 2 of you did one of these numbers.
No, I really like this
What?
concept.
Holy smokes. You know, I don't believe that. But watch the body language. The best thing you can do is to get a prospective hiring manager to lean forward. Why? Because they are now closing the gap between you and them, and they are about to insert something really important. Whatever it is, it could be about the career field, it could be about the current situations going on. In other words, let's say I'm interviewing with you and I'm talking about, oh, you know, well, we do this and this and this and this and this, and then I start saying, and earlier this year we had, 14 incidents of ransomware. Thankfully, none of them went any further. You notice I just shifted forward and I showed you what's valuable to me. Okay? Without even saying a word, I can tell you this is normal conversation and this is really important. Okay? So catch that. Watch for those things. And again, it helps to be a conversationalist, not somebody who dictates the conversation. I've had that as well. If somebody asks you a question, plan to spend, 30 seconds to 2 minutes responding to it and no more. Okay? You do not want the prospective hiring manager to have a list of 8 questions they're going to ask you and you only get to 4 because you were talking about, I like doing this and I don't like doing this, and when I was younger we did this, and when, next thing you know, your interview time is out. And they're going to be comparing your 4 answers to everyone else's 8 answers because they used their time wisely. So plan for a response, but don't plan to give your life story, even if it's a good one. Okay? Just find a way to make sure, and here's a way of thinking about it. Your time is valuable, my time is valuable, let's both make the most of it. That's cooperation, that's agreement, and that's what you want to show during your interview. Questions, comments?
I would also say, Scotty, when your interviewer asks you have any questions, have a list of questions ready that's not necessarily about benefits, next steps,
yep,
and all that. And your thought of having the employer lean in, maybe think of some good questions like, what problems are you facing in your agency or your group at this time?
Mm-hmm.
And what you hope for with that question is they'll share with you what their problems is, and that gives you the opportunity to give a 2-minute speech on how you could be the problem solver for them by providing a solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's something of a thought process out of my head.
No, that is excellent. I have been in interviews, just so everybody knows, I've been doing this for long enough. I've interviewed hundreds of people in this career field, and I can tell you, for example, when I look at a resume, I can tell you who will be hired usually 75% of the time just by looking at the resume. I can see interest on that resume. I can see enthusiasm on that resume. How come? Well, I volunteered to do this, or after we did this, we did this, which is, like I said, lessons learned. Anything that's highly technical, when you're done with it, you can't say was 100% perfect. How could we make it better? Always finish off by saying we did lessons learned. Even if it was just, wow, let's not do that again. That was a lessons learned, honestly. So be aware that the prospective hiring manager's looking for those sorts of things. But Chris, you're absolutely right. Have your questions ready to go. I'll give a couple examples. I was with a particular company interviewing people that I wanted to hire. You know, I had vacancies and I was interviewing for the hiring, and the people who impressed me the most were the ones that when they asked their questions, you knew that they had done their homework. In other words, well, in the job description it says that I'm going to be doing this, and the whoever gets hired is, you could even do it that way. I'm going to be doing. You've just inserted yourself into their minds as being the person they're going to select. Oh, I mean, whoever you hire. That's a psychological trick, dude. You have just said, in their minds. Look at this person in the situation of this vacancy. So let's say I'm doing this. It says this and this says, does it also include this? In other words, you've thought all the way through it and said, is this part of it as well? Wow. You've given some thought to this question that you just asked. Not, how soon can I get a raise? I've heard those. How soon can I get a raise? Dude, you're wasting my time. You get a raise when you're worth a raise.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I've heard it. And not everything it is, how do I say this? It's all showing your awareness, but also your interest. And the bigger pictures that you have, the more comprehensive you can look, the more well-rounded you can look to your prospective hiring manager. You want to nail the interview to where they say, this person has everything except maybe this thing that we need, we said we needed, but we can train him. We can train him. I remember numerous times in the course of my career saying, I can train anyone to do the technical side of this. Work a knowledge base, work a configuration management system, fix servers, set up network topology. Those are all the technical aspects, but I can't teach anyone to be nice. I can't. That is an intrinsic thing that you need to bring with you when you go to the interview. You can't say, I'm teachable, I'm pretty dirty rotten right now, but hey, you can make me. No. You've got to have that attitude that says, when I walk in the door, day one, I'm going to be a positive influence on this team. And part of that is demonstrated during the interview. They don't interview you to really ask clarifications on the resume. The resume is, think about it this way, for a casting call. Let's say you're going to, you want to be an actor. You go to a casting call, they hand you the script. They're not looking at how well you read the script. They're looking at how well you place yourself into the situation that is being described in the script. They're evaluating you, not the script. Same thing with your resume. They look at your resume. If the resume was not good enough, you would not be sitting in that interview. Okay? One other thing you might also remember when you refer to your resume, presume that they read it. Presume that they read it and they know everything in it, so you probably should. I don't think that it's a good idea to say, well, as it says in here and here and here, I did this and this and this. No, just say, I did this and this and this. And then guess what? They're going to say, oh, that was from 2018, wasn't it? They read your resume, see? So don't refer back to your resume unless they start that conversation, because you're basically saying, well, I wouldn't have to answer this question if you had read my resume. That's one of those, what's it called, passive-aggressive?
Yeah.
Don't go there. Don't refer to your resume, because presume they've read it, and now they're asking clarifying questions from it, and guess what? They may have missed things. But that's where you say, yeah, I've done this and this. Oh, really? Yeah, I said I did it here and here and here. Oh, okay, I didn't see that. Thanks. Or whatever. That's okay, because that's clarifying. That's expanding. But if somebody says, you know, hey, did you ever do this and this and this? Yeah, on my resume it said I did. You have just basically tried to school your prospective hiring manager.
Mm-hmm.
So stay out of that area. Any other discussions? This is all good stuff, folks. I mean, I'm glad we're recording this.
Armin, did you have a question? Because I saw your hand go up. You're on mute, buddy.
You're muted.
Figuring out his new system. It's okay.
Yes. So the question I have, because I'm also working as a volunteer in one food organization. So I'm working every Saturday, every another Saturday. So do I have to put such kind of experience in my resume? This is the first question. The second question, when after the interview, when I ask the question, do I ask such kind of question? How many members working in my team members? What is my responsibility? How big the team is? So that is my question. That is, this is a genuine question.
Scotty, you're on mute too.
Yep, I have to unmute too. Good questions. I forgot the first one already, so let me answer the second one. Your clarifying questions, in other words, where they say, do you have any questions? It's entirely within the good boundaries to ask, where do I fit in the team? Where do you see me fitting into the team? That's totally okay. For example, let's say they have a vacancy that and this has occurred with me, they have a vacancy they're interviewing you for, but when they looked at your resume, they said, you know, this guy seems to have experience here as well. What you don't know is I may have a vacancy that I'm about to announce that pays more, and I'm going to need people for that one as well. Maybe, I'll bring you on at this position and shift you to this one because this is more suited for you anyway. You don't know that. So it is helpful to say, where do I fit in the big picture? Are there certain skills that you think I need to brush up on or strengthen in order to be most successful in this? You're basically saying, when I hit the ground, where should I be focusing? That's excellent. I will tell you, have you guys all heard of SLAs, service level agreements?
No, I do not have.
Okay. A service level agreement is in a contract. Let's say I'm a supermarket chain, and I hire an IT firm to provide our email, for example, our email systems. There is going to be what's called a service level agreement within that contract that says the email system has to be up this amount of time. It has to, if there are problems with it, they have to be resolved within this period of time, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, basically a promise of a certain level of service. So a service level agreement, we both agree that you are going to provide this level of service to this particular, have you ever heard of for network downtime or uptime they talk about? That's typically what an SLA refers to. I promise you 4 nines of uptime. 99.99% of the time, the networks will be up and running. If they're not, you can say that I'm violating our contract. So that's called a service level agreement. So, man, I forgot where I was going with this. When you are asking questions of them, you are basically asking not only what do I do, but to what extent. And that gets into the service level agreement discussion. And for you to even understand SLAs is a very powerful thing. Because, that was the example. I was hiring somebody into a particular position up in Pittsburgh. And this person was going to be working all by herself. She was going to be the lone person up in that particular area of the country. And when I was interviewing her, number one, she was very bright, very perceptive, very positive, always focused on what I was asking and the proper response. So very detailed. I could already tell this person was going to be an asset. And as we were finishing up, I said, is there anything that you have any requests you have of me or any questions? And she said, yes. Does this position have service level agreements? And if so, can you share them with me? And I was like, oh, sure. Why? Tell me what is causing you to ask this question. She said, if you hire me, I want to hit the ground running. These are her words. And I want to knock your socks off. You're hired. Period. You're hired. And she ended up being in a lead position within my team because she had the positive mental attitude. She had the desire to please not only me personally, but the requirements of the contract. By the way, I'm a manager, so I'm responsible for everybody's performance within that contract. So she was like, tell me the SLAs and, you will not even have to worry about me because I know that I have to conform to those and I'm going to blow your socks off. I was like, well, that's impressive, and I did hire her. Within 24 hours, I hired her. So be thinking about the questions that you ask. Absolutely. It's okay to ask, where do I fit in the big picture? Oops. Everybody see me okay?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
And what was the first question?
The first question I have, because earlier you mentioned about the volunteering experience. So my major is cybersecurity, but I am not volunteering in a technical. I am volunteering for one. There is organization and they deliver the food, the people who affected by the COVID, who don't have a job and families. So every weekend I go there and help them. Do I mention such kind of experience? It is not relevant to my job. It is not relevant to my experience, but I am working as a volunteer. Is it okay to mention, because it is a food, there is a food association or food company. So is it okay to mention in my resume or not?
Very good question. My answer is yes, within the scope of the discussion. In other words, I'm interested in making things better. I'm working on my own to help make things better, not just for me, but for society, if you will. And I help to coordinate this, so I'm part of a technical framework, and that all fits together. I would not lead off by saying I'm doing work in a food service area, but say this is the technical work that I do as a volunteer because I care. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's not necessarily food service. It's what you do in this particular area that they're going to look for. They're not going to look for, oh, do you serve hoagies? That won't make a difference to them. But your skills being put to use in a team environment to help make things better, yes, absolutely. Those will all fit together in that.
Thank you. Got it.
Sure. Chris, Douglas?
Doug first, because I've talked too much today. You're on mute, Doug.
You're still on mute.
Sorry, I was talking to myself again.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I don't have any questions, but I do have. I've heard that a lot about the importance of learning body language, learning how to use it to your advantage, how to read it. It's very important. At one point back in the day, I wanted to be a police officer, and I joined a citizens policing police academy in Florida. It was very interesting, very, very, I learned a lot of things, and I even became a specialist with domestic violence victims. And one of the things I remember, they saying, even like, for example, for an interviewer, for someone who was doing an interrogation, they know just with body language when the person is ready to start talking to. Getting closer to him, don't invade their space, and if you do, they'll go back, that they're not ready yet, and so on and so on. And how they keep talking about their families, fictitious or otherwise, that sort of thing. And those things came up a lot about, the position, trying to take interest, on how to engage that from the interviewer as well. So it is, everything you've said makes a lot of sense. And
yeah,
it's true.
just when you, I would say, overall, when you walk into an interview, walk in with the mindset that I'm going to ace this. In other words, I know I'm a good fit for this job. My role here is to help you understand that as well. Rather than, well, you can always give a shot, You can try me. I'm a hard worker. Prospective hiring managers get 100 of those for every one high-quality interviewee. You want to be that high-quality interviewee when you walk in the room. Strong handshake, smile, think in your head, I'm a team player. We're all going to be successful. This is not about me being a Superman, So, yeah, it all works together. Anything else, guys? We're out of time. I was going to go on. Well, okay, I'll do one real fast thing. I sort of shared it, but then I stopped. When you are thinking about, there we go. This was something that I just found on Bleeping Computer. It talks about a breach for Acer computers, but the breach was in India. So here's just something to think about, and I went through my security guide. Just so you know, I'm using the Cybex guide. There is nothing in here on globalization, and there's nothing in here on offshoring. But it's something for you to think about. At an enterprise level, especially a global enterprise level, if you offshore, if you subcontract, then the individuals that you subcontract to have to adhere to the same standards you would expect for yourself and your own team. It doesn't matter where they're at. You should not accept a lower level of quality or performance simply because you're offshoring. So be thinking about that. This was a something that Acer did in India. Guess what? Acer was still responsible for it, even though it occurred in India. Well, you guys know this. Your system is only as good as your weakest link. So, make sure that when you're thinking about what we're going to do, you always take that weakest link into account because that's where you're going to get hammered. So just something to think about. Globalization, and oh, I see the hand up. Globalization and subcontracting makes no difference if you're going to offshore or if you're going to hire your brother. It makes no difference. You have to have the same level of expectations. Go ahead, Douglas.
Yeah, I'm going a little bit off topic, but still related. I have a question related to is threat hunting something rather new?
Is what?
Threat hunting.
Threat hunting.
Uh-huh.
Give me an example.
I haven't. I don't remember seeing that in the studies for the Security Plus exam 501.
Right.
But I think it's now it is included in the, or at least maybe I didn't see it. But one of the first things that I looked at in the 601 is threat hunting, which is a system where you go into each you go into each portion or segment of your network, or and you start looking deep into that. There's a process for that, where it's very, very involved. However, it is now it seems to be better, even better than pen test to a certain degree, because you don't have to. Pen testing is kind of like I forgot the word. It takes time away from what you're doing. The word is not perturbing. Invasive. It's like invasive to a certain degree. But this one, I think it starts with the mindset that you are already infected or something like that. And you start thinking which areas are the ones that you think are most probable where you're going to get hit. And then you start going deep into this one by one.
Right.
And it takes time, but very, very. So I was just asking if this is something that is new.
It is new. I agree with you. I just looked it up in the book. It had half a page on threat hunting, and it wasn't referred to anywhere else in the book. Threat hunting is basically where you evaluate the environment and try and discover what you would consider to be indicators of artifacts from a possible breach. For example, you've got a server out there, on your DMZ, and somehow its log got wiped. There's probably a reason for that. That is an artifact. That's not a something that shows you had an attack, but it's something that an attacker would generally do: cover their tracks. So threat hunting is where you apply, I would say, indicators of attack, rather than pen testing, where you actually attempt to test your system strengths. So you're looking at indicators of attack. Chris, go ahead.
I think you mean to say indicators of compromise.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep. I would accept indicators of attack. I think that's the term you were looking for when you were talking and listening.
I had indicators of, but yep, you're right. You're right. So yes, it's out there, Douglas. Whether it's going to be on the 601 exam, if it is, there will be one question, and other questions won't refer to it.
Okay.
If you read the little call out box, you're good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Quick question, Scotty, and it's more of a thought-provoking question, and it is a let's discuss kind of situation, and we can close it out. I'm wondering if at the start of your job search, you can take the job announcement, and this may have been covered in one of our old sessions, and that's the conversation starter that the employer wants to start the conversation with, saying, here's how you can start the conversation, go through the interviews, but then ask the questions based off of that. Just strategic thinking.
Yeah. If you are taking that approach, I would go off the script. In other words, if it says you're going to need to do this, 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 and this, ask a question that is outside of those four. Not, it says you have to do this. What do you mean by that? That's a lightweight question. You're tossing them a softball. If you say, it says I'm supposed to do this, and I know that this involves, whatever, will I also be expected to do this? In other words, you're interpreting and analyzing and synthesizing a question that is outside of the description. That shows that you're looking at it from a broader perspective.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool beans. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks, everybody. Harminder, good to have you this morning. Do you have any other questions before we go? Comments?
Just to comment about my recent invitee, my friend who signed up recently to the website and Facebook. He had something to do already this week, but next week he'll be here.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know.
Very good. All right. Everybody have a great Saturday morning, and I'm sure we will talk on Facebook. Please look for CS-Sensei or CS-Sensei at groups.io. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Everyone. Have a great